This week on the show, the Bruins make a big splash at the deadline, the Celtics right their pre-All-Star game woes, and the Red Sox finally get their guy. We discuss all that and more. Calling It starts right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Calling It podcast for February 26th. My name's Alex Barth. As always, I am joined by Alex Lebowitz. As almost always, as of the last couple of months, we are powered by CLNS Media. Lebowitz, a happy Monday to you.
Happy Monday to you as well.
I want to let the valued listening public know at home. It is a typical Monday for me. I was without a car today. Brakes are a bitch. So I am recording from the Foxborough adjacent studio. Lebowitz is back on the North Shore. So if we don't have our usual back and forth, it is because we are staring at each other across a computer screen. Other than that, though, business as usual here on the Calling It podcast. And actually, no, Lebowitz, let me say this. It's not business as usual because we are finally, and I hate that we always put them on the back burner, but let's not just do a full segment on them. Let's lead it off with the Boston Bruins because I thought they made a fantastic deal yesterday, acquiring Rick Nash. Just the background real quick. They give up Ryan Spooner, who had a year left on his deal, who was going to get bumped out of the lineup by Nash anyway. Matt Bolesky, and they of the Rangers to pick up half of his contract, which will be $2 million a year over the next 2 years. First-round pick, a seventh-round pick, and some, middle-of-the-road prospect. So I think it's a good trade. I like it. I think they're being aggressive. I think they're trying to win this year. Lebowitz, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a great deal. You didn't really give up much, especially related to this here. Bolesky and Spooner, they weren't really key contributors at all. You bring in a veteran presence in a year where you're going for it, especially when you consider the fact that Bergeron's getting older, Chara's getting older, and he's playing out of his mind for a 40-year-old. So this is the year they needed to go out and make a move like this. And this isn't, a blockbuster trade by any means. But it helps you out. It gives you another veteran leader and some more depth there and someone to put up on one of those top lines.
I feel like this was almost a two-part trade. I think you could have gotten Nash for Spooner, Liljegren, the prospect, and maybe like a third-round pick. But by upping it to a first, they get the Rangers to take Matt Bolesky's horrible contract, at least some of it, off the books. He was scheduled to make $4 million over the next 2 seasons. They split it 50-50, the Rangers and the Bruins did. So it's two birds with one stone. They get better in the now by adding Rick Nash, who is an upgrade over Ryan Spooner. I know he hasn't been great this year, but he really hasn't been playing around any talent. I think now that he's playing with a David Krejci, his numbers are going to go up. So they get better in the short term, and they get better in the long term in that they now have $2 million they can spend this offseason that they weren't necessarily going to have otherwise. So it's low risk. Look, it's a first-round pick. You're always hesitant to deal one of those, but it's going to be a low first-round pick, hopefully in the low 20s if everything goes well for the Bruins. So I like it. It's a low-risk, high-reward kind of move, and this is the kind of move that Peter Chiarelli just never made. And we've talked about time and time again how on the show the coach has been the difference, right? Bruce Cassidy has been the difference in this team's revival and the young guys being involved, but the GM's been a part of it too. Don Sweeney's been a part of it too. This was the first time he's really flexed his muscles like this. He's really put himself front and center, but starting off on an excellent foot, I think.
Absolutely. And I think just the past 3 years since there's been a new regime there, we've seen a lot pay off. You got guys like Heinen and guys like McAvoy and DeBrusk, Carlo, a ton of young guys who are really starting to kind of blossom in this Bruins system. And that's just a result of the moves that Sweeney made a few years back to get all these picks and all these assets. And now it's coming to fruition. You got a great mix of guys, and we've talked about this before, that are, some are veterans, some are young guys, and they're playing really well together. Bringing in a guy like Nash balances it out a little bit more. It gives you more depth and someone to pair again, as you said, with Krejci. So it's a great move for now this season, and again, getting that money off the books, because I don't think we can overstate enough. The window is closing with this team. In the beginning of the year, we thought this was the year where they should have probably sold. They've proven us wrong, fortunately. It makes it much better, much more fun to talk about in this podcast. But this is a move where you kind of have in mind okay, Bolesky's going to hurt us in the future if we want to bring anyone else in and continue to build. So, there's no long-term lingering effects from this trade. It's just helping you in the now, removing cap for the future and giving you flexibility moving forward.
So let's focus on the man himself, Rick Nash. First of all, just real quick, a lot of Rangers fans. I know a lot of Rangers fans. Isn't it a little bit better because they got a guy who was like beloved in New York? This was like a mainstay New York athlete who's now playing in Boston. Kind of feels like James Harrison again, or is that just me?
No, I agree. I don't think it's quite as it's not as Jim Murray would say delicious. It's not delicious as the James Murray signing, but it's definitely it's definitely nice to get someone who's a fan favorite of a rival team.
Yeah,
that's always nice.
There was some legit Twitter outrage yesterday. And part of the reason he was so beloved, his second year with the Rangers, 2014-15, he put up 69 points, a nice 69 points in 79 games. Since then, though, numbers haven't been quite what you'd expect. He had 36 points. The next year, that was in 60 games. He played 67 games 2 years ago, put up 38 points. And then this year he had played 60 games, put up just 28, which is a shockingly low number for him through this point of his career. Look, nobody's guaranteeing this guy's going to come in and be a point-a-night guy, although I will say his next point is his 800th, so that will be fun. But nobody's saying he's going to be a point-a-night guy coming in. Obviously, the numbers don't look pretty, just 28 points, like I said, in 60 games. But can he contribute? He looked okay last night against the Sabres, even though they lost. I thought he looked okay. He hasn't even practiced with the team, so you got to take that into consideration. And I believe they have an off day today and tomorrow, so I'm going to double check on the schedule here. But
they play next on the 27th.
They play next, and today is the 26th. So
tomorrow night they're back in action.
Okay, so they have an off day today where hopefully he can skate with the team a little bit, and then they're pretty much every other day here until they have the 4th and the 5th of March off. But they do have 4 home games coming up, so they can perhaps skate in between. So he is going to need to get into the fray. I am expecting a lot of him, though. I think he's a guy, especially when they get in that postseason, that's going to be one of their leading scorers. Been there, done that, veteran presence. I think the low numbers aren't necessarily – look, he is getting older. He's 33. But I don't think the lower numbers are as much – his game fading as they are. He wasn't playing with any talent around him. You put him on a line with David Krejci, a young talent like Jacob DeBrusk. I think, 28 points through 60 games, I could see him putting up 20 here down the stretch, 15, 20 down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, you look at his numbers, and you have to remember the Rangers are taking a real step back this year, and obviously your numbers are going to suffer when you're with less talented players, when you're on a team that's just not as productive. Obviously, again, age is probably a factor here. He's 33. He's not getting any younger. But he still has something left in the tank, and it was clearly enough to pull the trigger on this trade. Again, when you have the veteran presence that the Bruins have, I think it's easier for other veterans to come in and transition. And again, Cassidy has been a great coach, so you got to think that his system that he has in place right now will help a guy like Rick Nash be a huge asset on this team, and they wouldn't have gone through with this deal if they didn't think that was the case. The key is it's an upgrade. It's an upgrade from a guy like Spooner. It's an upgrade from guys like Bolesky, and that's what really matters. When your biggest asset that you're giving away is a first-round pick, I think it's worth it when you're going for a cup.
And speaking of going for a cup, it's tight in those top 3 spots in the conference. Tampa Bay has 87 points. Toronto has 83. The Bruins have 82, but Bruins have 2 games in hand on Tampa and 4 games in hand on Toronto, 60, 62, and 64, respectively. Toronto went out. I thought they made a great move. They got Thomas Plekanec, a good center. Rare you see Montreal and Toronto make a move, so that kind of tells you how seriously the Maple Leafs are taking things this year. Who had the better move? And then you also had Tampa Bay trading for Antti Niemi. Who of those top 3 teams in the Eastern Conference do you think had the best deadline? Which isn't done as at the time we're recording this. It's 11:30 right now on Monday. But there's one more Bruins move possible. We'll talk about in a minute. But assuming everything's done, all the major moves have been made. Maybe there'll be 7th defenseman here and there. Who had the best deadline?
I don't know. It's tough to say. I think all these teams, they're relatively around the same zip code. And I think the reality is the outlook for the Eastern Conference doesn't change all that much given these moves. it benefits each team that made a move for those top three.
Hang on. I want to take back the Niemi thing. I got bit by a fake Twitter account.
You did?
I did.
Okay.
Here, LeBron, go ahead.
Oh, those damn fake Twitter accounts. But I don't think this is going to give anyone this clear-cut advantage. I think what we'll see down the stretch are three top teams in the Lightning, Maple Leafs, and Bruins, all fighting for that top seed in the East, and inevitably they're going to be fighting to make it to the Stanley Cup. The one thing about this season is it's pretty evenly matched all the way around. You have the Vegas Golden Knights in the Western Conference, the Predators, who have built off of what they did last year. But there's not really one clear-cut top team, which I love to see. I wouldn't say anyone like overall won the trade deadline this season, but I think we had a lot of teams that definitely made decent improvements to put themselves in a position to potentially fight for that conference championship, that conference finals win.
So there's a couple names that are still kind of being floated out there. The first one, which is very interesting, is Erik Karlsson from Ottawa. I don't think he's getting dealt. I just think the price is going to be way too high. And I'm not too concerned about Tampa or Toronto going to get him. I frankly don't want the Bruins in on that. I think at that point you're giving up too much for just one season because you do still have some young pieces. And I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about that. But the one that's really interesting in the report this morning is the possibility of Torrey Krug being sent to Edmonton for Oscar Klefbom. Now, Torrey Krug is one of the real fan favorites in Boston. You talk about Rick Nash as a fan favorite in New York ever since he had that huge series against the Rangers in the playoffs a couple of years ago. But I think he's a guy who's kind of coasted off that series. I haven't been that impressed with him the last couple of years. He is very valuable in the power play because he's basically a forward, even though he plays defenseman. But I think, adding some size on the blue line, adding, getting a little younger, I wouldn't hate if they traded for Oscar Klefbom. If it was Torrey Krug for Klefbom straight up, I wouldn't hate that.
I wouldn't hate it either. You got to look at what this team needs. They're already one of the better defensive teams in the NHL this year. If you look at their goals against average, and a lot of that goes back to Tuukka Rask and how well he's played this season. But I think they're doing a pretty good job defensively this year. And Torrey Krug, he's not a defensive defenseman. He's a guy who gives you an edge offensively, and maybe once in a while he's a liability defensively given his size. You look at Klefbom, and he's a guy who's going to give you more size. He's going to be a little bit better on, defensively for you. I don't know if you necessarily need that. I think he's probably a better overall, well-rounded player. But I think Krug fits in with this team this season. I think he fills a void that they need to be filled. I think this is a move, and Jimmy Murphy mentioned it on Twitter, that you make in the offseason. Because, Klefbom is younger. He's better. He probably has a higher ceiling. Krug might be a little bit overrated given how much fans in this area like the guy. But I think he's important to this team this year. I think you need a guy like that. If they made the trade, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But I think you can keep him. I think he's someone who's good to keep.
All right, so we'll see. And let's be honest, Lebowitz, we probably should have recorded the show after the deadline today, but whatever. The big move's been made. It sounds like the big move's been made. McDonough's still out there. Carlson's still out there. Apparently Johnny Gaudreau, there's rumors flying around. That's a guy I would love to see the Bruins get, but I don't think that's realistic. But Bruins are a better team today than they were yesterday, even though
for sure
they lost their first back-to-back games in regulation. They lost back-to-back with an overtime game, but first back-to-back games in regulation with the loss last night since November.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, this is a good team. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I don't think there's really a favorite in the NHL this year. I think people are hesitant to call Tampa Bay the favorite just because of their playoff history. I think people are hesitant to call Vegas the favorite because they're an expansion team. It's their first year. But I don't really see a clear favorite. That being said, the Bruins have as good of a shot as anybody. They are in that elite pack right now in the NHL, which I won't lie, I didn't see coming in October.
Absolutely. And that's a benefit to the Bruins. They're not this stacked team with an abundance of talent. They're just a very good team in a season where it's pretty evenly matched and it's pretty spread out in regard to top talent. So they're benefiting from that. And hockey's a sport of who gets hot. It's really any sport. Whoever gets hot at the right time is going to make that run to win it. And obviously they have the goaltender this year in Tuukka Rask, who's been playing top-notch in net. So, you got to be optimistic if you're a Bees fan.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think it's necessarily the teams have played down to them, and that's what's let them get in this. I think it's the fact that they've played, up with the top teams in the league, with the Tampa Bays, with the Torontos, with the Nashville Predators, those kind of teams. So glad we got some Bruins talk in. There is plenty more coming in the next couple of weeks, but we pop across the hall in the Garden, checking on the Boston Celtics next. This is Calling It, powered by CLNS.
Calling It is brought to you by American Broadcast Coaches, training the next generation of media talent and communicators. For more information, check out AmericanBroadcastCoaches.com.
Welcome back to Calling It, powered by CLNS. Alex Barth, Alex Lebowitz, with you as we are just about each and every Monday. We haven't taken a Monday off since this summer.
How about that?
No days
off.
Well,
you haven't. I have.
You have. You went away. That's right. But the show must go on, as they say. We've probably deserved another Monday off at some point this summer.
Yeah, maybe. We had President's Day last week. We didn't take that off. We'll find a holiday. We'll find an excuse. We didn't take Christmas. Well, you were gone. I did a show on Christmas. Yeah, I would have done it if I was here. I don't celebrate it.
Oh, no, I know you would have. You would have. I mean, I don't either. Neither did Bobby. But we power on, as we do on the show. Talk a little Boston Celtics now. And this is a debate I've had on Twitter numerous times in the past couple weeks. I've had on the phone. I've had in person. And it's a fun debate now. It's going to get real serious in the offseason. Alex Lebowitz, the $1 million question, or it could end up being like a $15 million a year question. Marcus Smart or Terry Rozier?
You're going to hate my answer. It depends.
No, you don't get to. I am of cop-out answers. I love copping out on questions.
Well, what's the
cop out on this question?
Okay, here's my logic here. I just want to go through my logic, then I'll give you an answer.
Okay.
Marcus Smart's going to cost more money. I think that's. If he doesn't cost more money, then I'm taking Marcus Smart. So under the assumption that they both are within $2 to $3 million per year of each other, or $2 million per year of each other, okay. I'm going Marcus Smart. They don't need more scores. Terry Rozier is not a defensive guy. He's a scorer. They don't need another scorer off the bench. Maybe they need one off the bench. But I think the more valuable guy is Marcus Smart defensively. He's someone who gives you an edge. And if the figures are around the same, that's my guy.
But you just said he's more valuable, so shouldn't you be willing to pay him more? I'll go to 15 a year on Marcus Smart. I might even look. The Heat screwed everybody over. I got to look up the exact number, but they gave Kelly Olynyk that massive contract this offseason, and the price of bench players is going through the roof. But if that's the price of doing business, and you have everybody else in team control for the next couple of years, don't you have to hold on to Marcus Smart? Like you said, he's the more valuable player. Terry Rozier is a streaky shooter who can get really hot off the bench for 1 or 2 days a week. You can go get that guy. That guy exists elsewhere in the NBA. I mean, he's valuable, yes. You need a Terry Rozier on your team, but Shane Larkin arguably has been just as good this year.
I wouldn't say that.
When you factor in, look, when Terry Rozier is at his peak, he's very good, right? We saw him get the triple-double. But with the high highs come the low lows. With Rozier, I think Shane Larkin, he hasn't been as good as Terry Rozier, but is this team still in the same place if Shane Larkin's playing Terry Rozier's minutes? I think you can make an argument. So the numbers on Kelly Olynyk, he's going to make $10 to $12 million a year over the next 4 years. Keeping that in mind, if Marcus Smart comes to the table and asks for 16 per on a 4-year deal, don't you have to take that? He'd be ages 25 to 29 throughout the contract, which is technically his peak. In the last year, if it doesn't work out, he becomes a very valuable expiring contract that you can trade. And the fact of the matter is, and maybe now that Cleveland's getting better, this isn't as true, but the Celtics should be in at least one conference finals in the next 4 years. I think we can both agree on that, not including this year. They should be at least one conference finals the next 4 years, if not more. And I think it's also safe to say that they will probably meet the Warriors in that finals, at least one of those finals, if not more. And we've seen what Marcus Smart does to Steph Curry. 48 points in 3 combined games against the Celtics when Marcus Smart's on the floor. Then he drops 49 in the one game that Smart doesn't play. If you're going to be going up against the Golden State Warriors for titles, isn't that contract worth it just for those series?
So right there, that's the question. Are you signing him for the next 4 years? Is your window the next 4 years, or is your window the next 10 years? Because, again, I'm always going to go back to this. You have two guys in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and even a guy like Kyrie Irving, who you still got to pay eventually, right? Because I don't know. They didn't sign him over when they traded for him, did they? We could check that.
I'm going to pull it up, but.
And then you also have Gordon Hayward, who obviously they have to that max deal. So you have a bunch of guys who you do have to pay.
Yes, but
over the next 4 years, will that keep you from paying those guys? Another thing to keep in mind is also that in 2 years, Al Horford's contract will expire. They're not going to re-sign him, so you have room there. You know what? I think if the difference is 16 per year to Rozier's 12 per year, I'd probably go Marcus Smart because I think he gets.
I'm not giving Rozier more than 10. I'm not giving him more than Olynyk.
Okay, and I don't know. I have a feeling they're not going to pay the guy though. I feel like he's going to want 20 per year. He's going to want a big Avery Bradley like contract, and they're not going to be willing to go up to 20 a year for essentially a sixth man. He helps you a lot. He gives you a spark off the bench. He's one of the better defensive guards in the NBA, I'd say, just based off of how aggressive he plays. They need that. They need that more than they need a Terry Rozier who can score off the bench. So if you're going for need, obviously Marcus Smart is your guy. Terry Rozier is not the same player. And people who compare the two, I understand it. They're both guards. They're both role players / six-man type guys. But they're completely different skill sets. And one of them you need more than the other. It's clearly Marcus Smart. He's a James Posey-like guy. And I think that's valuable to a team like the Celtics that has a lot of young guys who aren't quite polished enough defensively, but can score. You don't need a scorer. You need a defensive spark. That's what Marcus Smart is. Long story short, I'd sign Marcus Smart over Terry Rozier.
So Kyrie Irving is under contract for the next 2 years after this one. They will probably resign him, but so, and one more thing to your point, Marcus Smart on a 4-year deal would expire the year you need to pay Tatum. So that doesn't stop you from doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you have Tatum in that last year, but Marcus Smart would be on a 1-year deal at that point. He'd be very tradable. And the NBA cap is crap. We know this. Once you get a guy in the building, if your owner's willing to go over the luxury tax, which Wick has said time and time again that he is, you can keep anybody. You just got to get him there. And if you get the team as good as the Celtics really should be, between Tatum, Brown, Irving, and the guy they're going to draft this year or next year with that last pick they have, you'll be able to get quality free agents for the veterans minimum. You'll be able to get the ring chasers, the Kyle Korvers, the Ray Allens late in his career, those guys. So I think, you can't consider the crap as much as it is a roster spot, and I'm giving Marcus Smart the roster spot over Terry Rozier every day of the week. And I get that Terry Rozier is kind of this flashy, fun toy for the Celtics, and maybe what he does looks a little prettier, but no Celtics fan will acknowledge how inconsistent he is from the field. He has some nights where he'll hit 8 to 10 shots, and then he has a game like he had against Atlanta the night after the triple double where he went 3 of 17. You can get 3 of 17 from Marcus Smart. We know that.
He's consistent in that regard,
and you'll get much better defense. Smart, remember, Marcus Smart, they're not as grand as Terry Rozier's, but he'll go on his hot streaks too from the field. But
you
have
can't.
A week where he puts in 10 a game. I'm not saying you can count on it, but he will give you offense from time to time.
I think
I can't even believe it's a debate. That's where I stand on it.
Yeah, I think it speaks to how good he is defensively that, you look at his plus minus, it's always in the positive. It's always like one of the best on the team. They play better when he's on the floor, and that's even considering the fact that he is an offensive liability. He sucks from the field. And I think if he reins in his shot selection and isn't taking the last shot when everybody else on the floor is better offensively than he is in a game that comes down to the last shot, I think if he corrects those mistakes, doesn't punch, walls or mirrors or whatever it was, a picture frame, I think he's your guy. I like his aggressiveness. I like his spark. I like his attitude. And he's definitely more valuable than a guy like Terry Rozier. It just goes back to the future for me. 4 years when his contract expires, assuming he does sign for that 4-year mark, Tatum's contract is expired too. Then you can re-sign him and part ways with Smart. What happens to Jaylen Brown? Will Tatum and Jaylen Brown both be max deal guys by then? Then you have Gordon Hayward, Kyrie, Tatum, and Brown Maybe Brown won't be, but you have a lot of guys you got to pay, and I know that they can work their way around it, and they won't have the depth that they have now. But it comes down to your top 3, top 4 players at the end of the day, and I'm just worried that if you do link up with a guy like Marcus Smart and pay him the money that he's going to want, that's going to cripple you in the future to sign other assets. Again, I think there are ways around it, but that's my only concern. That's the only thing that makes me even a little bit hesitant to say I'd rather go with a guy like Marcus Smart, who's going to want five more million per year over a guy like Terry Rozier.
But they don't. Why do they need to go out and sign somebody? They have their whole team put together.
They don't. They don't. It's about re-signing.
Re-signing, it's all crap in the NBA. Once you get the guy in the building, you can pay him whatever you want, and if you're willing to go over the luxury tax, it's not going to hurt your cap number.
I also think that Kyrie's going to be a guy who takes less than the max to do a KD-like move. I could see that. Yeah, I could see that too. And then that will be the off season, the summer of 2020 is when he is up. And just because I know people are saying, "Oh, you can't count on me. Punch the picture. He missed a month." I really don't care, honestly. Especially in that league, the best players they all got a screw loose. Look at LeBron James made his GM or whatever trade half the team. KD is a total front runner. Who are the other top players in that league? Russell Westbrook. It's really not anything negative, but you see, like Russell Westbrook actually is kind of a good kind of screw loose because he has no problem standing up for his teammates on the court in press conferences, whatever. But you're not going to get that guy that doesn't come without question mark in the NBA at talent. DeMarcus Cousins, and everybody told me that I shouldn't want DeMarcus Cousins because he got issues off the floor. That's just what you have to settle with to get top-level talent. And Marcus Smart is by no means DeMarcus Cousins, Kevin Durant, LeBron James. But I'll sit here and tell you right now, he's the second-best perimeter defender in the NBA behind Kawhi Leonard. Who knows what's going on with that guy? So I'll tell you right now, Marcus Smart, whatever the headache is, as long as he's out there on the floor in the playoffs, is 100% worth it. I think if your best player has that attitude of Marcus Smart, it's a negative. But if you have a role player like Marcus Smart who knows his place, whose priority is winning, then I don't think it's as big of a deal. I don't mind the attitude. I think it's a positive, and I think his teammates respect him. I think Brad Stevens likes him. I think Danny Ainge likes him. That's what matters. I don't think it's fair to compare him to DeMarcus Cousins. I think he's closer to Russell Westbrook attitude-wise, although he isn't even like a Russell Westbrook attitude-wise. He's his own thing. He just has a temper.
You kind of need that pit bull. You need that enforcer.
Sure, and that's why he's such a spark up the bench, because of his attitude and aggressiveness, and that's something that Rozier doesn't really have, let alone the defensive ability.
Callin' It is brought to you by American Broadcast Coaches, training the next generation of media talent and communicators. For more information, check out AmericanBroadcastCoaches.com.
Welcome back to Callin' It. Alex Barth and Alex Lebowitz with you. We are just over a month out from opening day. They're starting March 27th, 28th. It's early this year.
They start earlier and earlier every single season. It's crazy. They're going to starting the regular season in January one of these days.
I can't stand it because it gets not even rain, snowed out every year. The opener.
Oh, I don't care. I love it. It's signifies spring's coming earlier. If they did that in January, I'd be like, all right, sweet, spring's here. It'd be a nice little placebo for me.
Please, we have a nor'eastern coming supposedly Friday and Saturday, or Saturday and Sunday this weekend, whenever. So we're not quite out of the woods yet. But keep your hearts warm during that. Red Sox finally got JD Martinez. Took them long enough. Still 5 years, still $110 million. Opt-outs after years 2, 3, and 4. Kind of sounds like the ideal relationship, right? Ba-bum. I actually have a drum kit right next to me. I could have actually done that instead of making the noise by myself. That was a missed opportunity. Anyway, JD Martinez with the Red Sox. We talked about it a little bit last week. I said to you off air, we're going to record the show about the Red Sox maybe getting JD Martinez, and he's going to sign at 4 o'clock. And I think he signed at 5. Signed, air quotes, at 5.
Yeah. Then there was a week of back and forth afterwards.
I like the deal, though, and I was critical of it all offseason because I thought they were going to end up paying him $200 million. But 5 years, $110, that feels about right. I'm actually okay with that. I think Dave Dombrowski will give him credit. he got the better of Scott Boras. That's not something people do. All the power in the world to him. This ended up being a very good move by the Red Sox, which I didn't think it would be.
Yeah, he called his bluff. I think he realized that no one else was willing to pay JD Martinez $125 million. And you know what the original asking price was for Martinez? It was something ridiculous, like 7 years, 210 million.
210, yeah, something like that.
Ridiculous. The fact that he got him down to 5 years, 110, is great negotiation and just smart. He looked at the field. He looked at who else was looking at this guy. And he's like, no one's giving him this much money. This is a down year in free agency, and we're not going to budge. And the reality is, they didn't really need him. They don't need a JD Martinez. It's nice to have him. He gives you, some extra pop, even if he only gets 25, 30 home runs compared to the 45 he had last season. You'll take that with the way that the lineup hit last season. So I'm overall, I do like the deal. I think it's a good move for the Red Sox. Gives them some depth. And hopefully it adds some power to the lineup.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that they don't need him because I feel like I'm the only person who's been saying that. I feel like I've been yelling it into the void. If it fell through, it really hurt JD Martinez more than it did the Red Sox because he was going to get no money after that. But I thought it was a good signing mostly because, they had a good power bat, but 1A, I guess, you now have an expendable player. Now, some people think that's Hanley Ramirez. Some people think that is Mitch Moreland. I personally think it should be Jackie Bradley Jr. I know Martinez isn't huge on playing the field, especially left field at Fenway, but I've said time and time again, I'm not in love with this Red Sox rotation. It seems like Lebowitz, we're having this debate weekly, but I don't. They have maybe the best top one in baseball, but David Price is still a sort of question mark. Rick Porcello is a huge question mark. Drew Pomerantz is fine as a third starter, but I love him a lot better as a 4. You don't know if Eduardo Rodriguez is going to give you much. He's already expected to miss the first month of the season. You don't know what's going on with Stephen Wright between his injury and his suspension. And look, the Red Sox go out, sign a Doug Fister type veteran journeyman back end of the rotation. Cool. Awesome. You got your 5-man. What they could also do is go trade Jackie Bradley Jr. for an established number 3, even maybe if a team really likes Jackie Bradley Jr., which some might, an established number 2 starter, then you have Sale, Price, whoever you get. I feel a lot better with Pomerantz as your 4th and your 3rd. And if Rick Porcello is your 5th, fine. Okay, I'll take that much of a question mark. You have a former Cy Young winner as your 5. That I'm okay with. I think now there has to be another move, whether it's trading Jackie Bradley Jr. or, and I'm going to stick to this even after they signed Martinez, because I think there's no market for this guy for whatever reason, and they can get him for cheap. I still want to see them make a play at Jake Arrieta. So I think there needs to be another big move coming to bolster up the back end of that rotation.
I mean, the question there is luxury tax, but back to
They're the Red Sox. They print money. I'm sick of hearing about the luxury tax.
But I know it's not about that. It's about what you lose. It's about how much what you lose if you go over that luxury tax. You lose picks. You're fined an incredible amount of money, like 50% of what you're paying.
Also,
it's ridiculous.
If they added Arrieta, and right now I have them kind of in the same spot they were last year, losing in the first round of the playoffs. I think they'll be the wild card team, not the division winner, but I think they win a wild card game and lose in the first round. If they add a Jake Arrieta, an established starting pitcher, I think that could be the difference between them being bumped in the first round of the divisional series and making a very interesting, possibly even winning the LCS. I think that one guy could make that much of a difference because what has Jake Arrieta done that nobody else in this rotation has? Win a playoff game. An established middle starter could do enough. If that's the difference of 4 or 5 wins, that could be enough to win you the division. I genuinely believe that. And you get out of that wild card game. You don't have to use Sale in that game. And I know I'm going way down the road here, but a home divisional series, as opposed to have to going on the road after playing a wild card game, is a huge effing difference. I think even if it is just a middle of the rotation guy, I'm not talking about adding, a guy like a Clayton Kershaw, but I think even a guy like an aging Jake Arrieta or a guy like a Jeff Samardzija, somebody like that, I'll even go out on a limb, and I don't love the injury history, but even a Matt Harvey could make that much of a difference.
Maybe. Matt Harvey, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think also one thing you got to bring up is who has more value, Jackie Bradley Jr. or Xander Bogaerts? Because I'd be just as willing to trade Xander Bogaerts at this point as I would Jackie Bradley Jr.
You don't have the replacement ready for Bogaerts. You can take Bradley
Eduardo Nunez, and then you got to wait for Pedroia to come back. But you have Nunez, who's right there, who honestly was better offensively last season than Xander Bogaerts was. Think about that for a second. Eduardo Nunez has a better bat than Bogaerts. Bogaerts might be better in the field, but still.
No, if anything, you should base that argument on the bat. I'm not thrilled with Bogaerts in the field, but you know what?
He's not great, but Eduardo Nunez isn't good on the field either.
You're selling me on this a little bit. You are. Keep going.
So that's what I think. I think that Bradley is a great player. He has a lot of value. Who has more value, though? I think that's the question. I'd be just as willing to part ways with Xander Bogaerts as I would Jackie Bradley Jr. And I think it's a weird thing because I think Bogaerts is looked at very highly upon in the MLB just because of what he was and the potential he did show in his first couple years in the league compared to Jackie Bradley Jr., who, although his numbers last season were overall better than Bogaerts, he's streaky. He's very streaky. Both guys are. But who's going to get you more? The shortstop who could turn into a stud or a center fielder in a league that has a lot of outfielders to choose from?
And it really is the Marcus Smart, Terry Rozier debate all over again.
Yeah.
Right? Jackie Bradley Jr. is Marcus Smart. There's definitely some elements of Xander Bogaerts that remind me of Terry Rozier. They're both going to be up soon. You can only pay one of them. And I mean, it's kind of the same discussion. I think
both are Boris guys.
Right. So they're both going to they're not just going to get paid, they're going to get paid.
Yeah.
You're right, though. Some of it hinges on Bradley's value, and I think he's a guy Xander Bogaerts, I think his value will be more or less the same as you go across the league. I think with Jackie Bradley Jr., it's going to be great variance because he only fits on a team that has established offensive talent, and you're kind of looking at, I think a team like Colorado would be a team that would be really interested in him, maybe even a team like Cleveland. But I think that adding a Doug Fister isn't the option this year to shore up the back end of that rotation. And I'm still not sold on people tell me they've maybe the best rotation in the American League. I don't see how you can say that when we don't know who their fifth starter is.
I mean, you got to perform, first of all. I mean, last year they did not play. They didn't pitch like that. Here's the thing with the Red Sox, and this is why I do have hope that they can be a World Series contending team, a legitimate one. Last year, most of that roster underperformed significantly, and they still won 93 games.
Yeah.
When you look at the Yankees and the moves they made, yeah, they brought in Giancarlo Stanton. Before this past season, though, he has had a real hard time staying healthy, and he's also transitioning to the New York market. I'm not as optimistic that that's going to be a smooth transition for him as a lot of Yankee fans are. Match that with having a first-time manager in Aaron Boone, but we have Brian Cashman. He's going to make all the decisions. All right, we'll see how that works out.
Aren't the Red Sox kind of doing the same thing? They got their big back going from Arizona to Boston. It's probably the same thing as Miami to New York. Yeah, but it's not a first-year manager. Isn't it the same thing?
It's not as hyped, and I think the Red Sox have, dare I say, a little bit more talent top to bottom than the Yankees do. At least it's very comparable. I think you can make an argument for both teams. I do. I'm sorry. I think we've seen what these guys are capable of. Benintendi's coming into his third year in the league. He could have a breakout season. Mookie Betts, who struggled last year, I think he'll pick it up this year and he could be an MVP caliber guy, which he has been in the past. Bring in JD Martinez. If he hits 25, 30 home runs, that's enough. And Devers, obviously, at third base in his second season in the league. You have a lot of guys who, if they perform to their capabilities, you have a really good team. You have a really good team.
Look,
the problem is
I don't
leadership.
doubt the offense at all. It's the pitching staff that's giving me pause.
I don't even look at the pitching staff. David Price, he ended the season on a good note in September, and this is me.
In the bullpen, where he should
I understand. I understand, but pitching is pitching. It's a different approach, but pitching is pitching. I'm not trying to sound optimistic. I'm just trying to lay out how good this Red Sox team could be. And part of their problem
isn't that always the thing with the Red Sox? It's all what ifs.
I know, but the difference this season is you have a new manager and you have new leadership. So and that's really the same thing with the Yankees as it is with the Red Sox. The Yankees had a huge downgrade with their manager from Girardi to Aaron Boone. And this year, the Red Sox could potentially have the complete opposite effect and have a great manager who comes in and lights a spark under the ass of this team. I don't know. I'm in the camp of John Farrell was a brutal manager, one of the, between 20 and 30th in the league in that bottom tier. I don't think he can motivate anyone. I'm hoping that Alex Cora can do a better job. I think he can be capable of it. He's a young manager. He might not be. The Red Sox might stink again this year. They might win 89 games and sneak into the second wild card spot. That could happen. But they have talent. They have a new manager, and they can be a contender this year. If players play to their potential, they can be a contender. And I'm not 100% sold on the Yankees. I'm just not. They have talent too, but I think there's still question marks there. I think there are. And all the Red Sox have to do is play as well as they're capable of, and you have a fight for that AL East spot. It's not just the Yankees fighting for it. One more thing. The reality is it's the Astros year. They're going to go back to the World Series. That's who you're competing with. You're not competing with the Yankees. I'm talking about specifically you're not competing with the Astros. You're competing with the Yankees. But specifically in the AL East, the Red Sox can win that division. They can. They're good enough to.
I still think they're one piece away from doing so. You had a lot of what ifs in there. And look, if it's 2013, right? Every single what if went right, and they won the World Series. And I think if every single what if goes right for the Red Sox, they could win the World Series again. But that's just unrealistic to expect.
No, I know.
Look, I think Farrell was a bum manager too, but that doesn't mean Cora is going to be a good one. You have total question marks on half of your rotation. You can only really expect you get half. You have total question marks on most of your rotation, pretty much everybody but Sale. You only get to ride with maybe half of those realistically. Look, I'm not saying that they're going to compete with the Astros. I'm not. But look, how much fun did we have last year when we went to that final game out there in the pouring rain, watch them try to come back? Don't you want baseball in late October again like that? Don't you? And like that's all I'm asking for here. And I think as it stands right now, we're not going to get that. We might get a wild card game.
Well, back to your what ifs argument. Yeah, in 2013, every what if went right. They caught lightning in a bottle. They were nowhere near a top team in the MLB talent-wise. Last year, I'd say the opposite happened. I think every what-if went wrong during the season. A lot of guys played like absolute crap, and again, they still won 93 games, which speaks to the talent that they had. If you have good leadership in that locker room, if guys actually stick to their word and say we want to change, and David Price isn't such a D-bag this year and a diva in front of the media.
That's a huge what-if. If you're counting on that, I don't think that's Price being a stand-up guy in front of the media to save this team this year. You should just not watch because it's going to be painful.
Okay, maybe he's not a stand-up guy, but it won't be nearly as bad as it was last year. And I just can't imagine the media hoopla surrounding this team, the negative stuff, will be anywhere close to what it was last year this season. The what-ifs, yes, they went right in 2013. They went wrong in last season. If half of the what-ifs go right, though, they're in a good chance. They're in a good spot. And if they have 2 or 3 good pitchers next season, all you need is Price or Porcello to pitch what they're capable of pitching at a level they're capable of pitching at, and not be in the mid-4s ERA-wise. They're in a better position than where they were this season. So I don't think that's that outlandish to expect. Last year, they gave me nothing to root for. I hated that team. It was brutal to watch. This season, you have a new manager in there who I'm hoping, I'm optimistic, I'm cautiously optimistic, can light a spark under their ass. And maybe they'll respond to him in a better way. John Farrell was a first-time manager in 2013. Terry Francona was a first-time manager in 2004. And yes, I know Bobby Valentine was a first-time manager in 2012. So there are the negatives. I don't know. I think that things can be positive for the team. They have the talent for it to happen. I think we just got to wait and see what happens. I think by May we'll know what this team's all about. Realistically, that first month we'll see. Okay, do they have something? Do they not? But right now I'm reserving my total opinion for then. All I'm going to say is they're capable of being a World Series contending team this year. That's it.
We still got a lot to figure out between now and then. We'll be talking plenty of Red Sox in the next couple weeks. As always, you can find this show and the rest of our shows on our Twitter page at Callin' It Podcast. Give us a follow. clnsmedia.com as well. We will be back next week. It will be March. So maybe some college basketball talk. There'll definitely be more Red Sox, Bruins, and Celtics as well. So until then, he is Alex Lebowitz. My name's Alex Barth. He's been calling it. Thanks for listening, everybody.